Um, all right, people, it's 8:35. That's Sri Lanka. It's not Sri Lankan time, so I believe it's 5 past 9. So I'm gonna get started. So hi everyone. I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend, and and everyone is staying safe and doing well during this pandemic time. So first of all, thank you SCF for giving me this opportunity to talk about my experience and things I've learned during grad school. A couple of things I just want to talk about. So when I first got the invitation, I was thinking that I should talk about how to prepare to get into grad school, because when it was my time, that was like 10 years ago, I was pretty clueless, and I wish there was someone to like guide me or give me information on how to apply. But then I realized this audience has our younger generation, the people who are doing A-levels and people who has just finished A-levels. So I thought I would just talk a little bit about my life and what happened during A-level time and after A-levels, and why I decided to do molecular biology, just to inspire a few people, because you will see. So anyway, so I'm Das, so I'm a postdoctoral researcher in Professor Jamie Cate's lab at UC Berkeley. And just to give a brief introduction of what I'm doing right now, so I'm a biochemist, and my training back in Ph.D. time was as a biochemist. So when I first joined Professor Cate's lab, I was given this very basic question to answer how immune cells produce proteins. So in this picture, you could see the immune cells, and I was just interested in how these immune cells are producing proteins. So it started off with that very simple basic biology question, and while we were working on it, it developed into a very complex project which needed help from so many different expertise. For example, we had to get help from a bioinformatician, so I'm collaborating with Professor Nick Ingolia at Berkeley, and also we wanted to learn more about the immune system and use genome engineering techniques to edit the T cells with the help of Alex Marson from UCSF. So it turned out to be a huge project, and now we are diving into the next generation of cancer therapy, the Cate cell therapy. So here you could see this is a cancer cell, and this is the novel method of cancer therapy where you use the immune cells of your body to fight off cancer cells. So we are now diving into characterizing those cells. So it became a very complex project right now, and we wouldn't be able to get here without the help of our great collaborators. So that's just a brief introduction about my current work. This talk is not about me. It's just like I want to inspire our younger generation in Sri Lanka, and to find their passion, to find their path, just like what happened to me. So as I said before we dive into how to apply to grad school, I just want to tell my story of why I ended up doing molecular biology. And this story, I hope, will inspire people, young kids who didn't have things go plan as they wanted, because nothing went the way that I wanted. Like, I had this perfect plan and nothing went on the way I wanted. So let's see. So basically, I grew up in Sri Lanka. My high school education was at Mahamaya Girls College, Kandy, and then everything was fine. Everything was going perfect until I did my A-levels. So the grand plan was, I'm gonna do A-levels in the bioscience stream, going to be a medical doctor, and everyone in my family, my friends, they all had these big dreams that I'm gonna be this great doctor after my A-levels, and we didn't even think of plan B because that's how I thought life is gonna be. So A-levels results came. I was devastated. I barely passed the exam, barely made it to science faculty, and I was really depressed, and I thought my career is over. So I stopped for a while, and I was thinking, what are my options now? So didn't have my dream plan working out. So I could either go to science faculty or I could find a job. So after a long period of debating and being depressed and being very sad, I decided to go to science faculty. So again, well, this is Sri Lanka. My parents had this great plan, and there's this misconception, okay, you're gonna go to the science faculty, you're gonna do a 4-year degree in chemistry. Forget about whether you love chemistry or you, doesn't matter, you have to do a 4-year degree in chemistry, because if you want to be successful in science faculty, you need to do a 4-year degree in chemistry. That was the idea. If you have done if you have done biology. So, okay, so I have another plan. Okay, medical school didn't work out, going to science faculty, going to be a chemist. So took my first year of classes. It was a combination of biology and a few chemistry. I loved biology, enjoyed the classes thoroughly, hated chemistry, hated it. So then it's the second year where they, where you start taking more specialized courses. So of course, okay, my grand plan is to do a 4-year degree in chemistry. I took a bunch of chemistry courses, and no matter what, whether I like it or not, struggled so much, got all B's. Okay, so grand plan number 2 failed. So because getting into chemistry, 4-year degree is very competitive. It's one of the most competitive programs back then in my university. I was actually at University of Peradeniya, I forgot to tell. So basically, didn't work out. So grand plan number 2 failed. Okay, again, back to plan B. Didn't have it back then either, even though I should have learned by then. So let's see, what are my other options? I could either do, I had enough grades to do a 4-year degree in zoology or botany. So they didn't have a 4-year degree plan for biology back then, okay? Or I could do a 3-year degree in basic science, in a general degree. Yeah, that's what it was called. So yeah, so I thought about it, and then I was like, well, I don't see myself really doing zoology or botany. Okay, gonna settle down to a general degree, that's how life turned out to be. And again, there was this stigma again back at university. So the losers are the people who does this 3-year degree plan. And because it was competitive getting into these 4-year degree plans, and I faced that again. So I was like, okay, this is what I have to do now. So settled into my 3-year general degree, and just 2 weeks into my 3rd semester, that's when you start your specialized field. The university suddenly announced that they're going to start a 4-year degree in molecular biology and biochemistry. And back then, I had taken 1 or 2 classes in biochemistry, and kind of interested me, didn't know much about it. So I was like, okay, let's give it a try. It's better than this general degree that I was going to settle down to. So by that time, most of the students in my university have already, have settled down with their decision of going in their special degree. So there were only 4 people enrolled in this molecular biology special degree course at my university. And I'm very happy to say that it was the first 4-year degree in molecular biology and biochemistry in the country. And so it was 4 people. The faculty wasn't very well trained because it's a new degree, and we were like the guinea pigs, and we didn't really have a proper like syllabus. They were trying to like get the credits covered by allowing us to take courses from other disciplines, like few courses in chemistry, few courses in like botany. It wasn't entirely biochemistry, and the labs weren't that organized either, and because we had only 2 faculty. So even among all those challenges, I started really enjoying the subject matter, even though there weren't much practical aspect to it. And when it came to the 4th year, that's when we were supposed to do a thesis, like a practical, like a small thesis that you do throughout the last year. And I was very fortunate because I was paired with a professor who just graduated from his PhD from Japan. And he was very young, and he had this nickname called Podisa. And he like was very enthusiastic, and it was my first time that I really was able to engage in some sort of a research project, and that was very inspiring. We didn't have so much resources, to be honest. We were like recycling the instruments that should be disposable in a proper setting, and but what my small project was about, this plant called, it's a carnivorous plant very endemic to Sri Lanka, called Nepenthes distorostoria. So people call that bandura in my language. And so what these plants do is they trap insects, and they use their enzymes. So the plants secrete their own enzymes to digest these insects for their nutrients. So my small project was about to characterize these enzymes, specifically used to digest the DNA of the animals or the insects they trap. Like, it was a really nice small project. Didn't have so much resources, but like really was fortunate to be working with that young professor. His name is Sanat Rajapaksa. I think he's the head of the department now. And so that's where like I really realized that, okay, none of my plans worked the way I wanted. Everything was rerouted to a different path. But at the end, it was a blessing in disguise. So I'm truly like thankful that it didn't really work. So I hope this story will inspire the younger generation, for people who have this stigma that you have to do really well in your A levels to have a successful career. So it's okay not to do what everyone else does. It's okay sometimes to follow your path, enjoy, and see what life's brings to you. So with that, I'm gonna get to this quote my PhD mentor used to say. This was the thing he told me when I left his lab: if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. So that's exactly what I did with my life. So that's just a little bit of introduction and how I ended up doing molecular biology and how I ended up being here when I had this grand plan of life at the beginning after high school. So having said that, let's go ahead and talk about how to apply to graduate school. So this was a topic that I really wanted to talk with the younger generation in Sri Lanka, because when I was applying to graduate school after my undergraduate degree, I didn't really know what I was doing. I really didn't know where to apply, how to apply, and so I think it's important to like spread the message, tell people what I learned throughout these time being in a graduate program and then a postdoctoral study. So let's go through the basic requirements first. So of course, you need a 4-year degree. That's a requirement. And if you don't have a 4-year degree, it's not the end of the world. You can do a 3-year degree, that general degree that I was talking about, and then do a master's, and then you can start getting into a US graduate program. I've had friends who've done that, so it's not the end of the world. Then transcripts. So if you consider your GPA to be very important, there's a small difference there, because if you're a US student, they don't really pay so much attention to transcripts. But then again, we are talking about international student admissions to US graduate programs. So the capacity is limited. You don't have a lot of opportunities. So it doesn't hurt to have a great GPA. But if you doesn't have it, it's not the end of the world. There's ways to like patch it up. There's ways to like convince the admissions board that you deserve to be in, you deserve to get into graduate school. And then of course, scores from standardized testing. What I mean by that is GRE and TOEFL or IELTS to show your English proficiency. So let's talk about GRE. I have noticed that the schools are now willing to overlook the GRE score. For example, Berkeley, which is where I am, they don't look at the GRE score anymore. However, if you are an international student, you have to have the TOEFL or the GRE, TOEFL or the IELTS, because you need to show that you are able to learn and study in English, because everything is in English. But not having a GRE score is not going to be the end of the world. But since again I'm emphasizing, if you're an international student, I would love to like cover all the bases, have the perfect application, so it doesn't hurt to have a perfect GRE score. If you have it, it's great. Okay, so these are just the basic requirements, and I'm going to focus more on the more important requirements. So letter of rec. This is one of the most important things that US universities now pay attention to. Now, for example, I had this undergrad working with me. She was amazing. She wasn't going to go to she wasn't going to go to grad school, but she was going to go to medical school. And she told me, and we had this session, one-on-one, sat down, and we, like she was working under me. She wanted a letter from my professor, but she wanted me to write her letter because she wanted to make it as personable as possible. Now, when you get a letter of recommendation from your professor that you have taken a class, this professor is going to get like tens and thousands students asking for letters of rec. And most of the time, these professors will have a template and they just change the name, send it out. It's because it's understandable, they all have 24 hours per day, and they don't have the time to like make every letter as personable as possible. So one suggestion that I tell is, if you're taking a course and if you really love the class or the lab course, like try to get noticed by the professor, go after class, make use of office hours, ask questions, just be noticed, because like having a more personalized like a letter of rec can send you a long way. So very important. Then statement of purpose. So all these US applications, they require you to write a small essay about yourself and why you really want to go to grad school, and what do you want to take out of this program. And even in undergrad applications, I know that US schools really pay attention to this statement of purpose. So here, you just don't want to write a regular statement where like, oh, I really want to do biochemistry because I love blah 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 blah. No, you need to stand out here. You need to show why you're unique and why you are so special that among thousands other people you have to be given the chance. So statement of purpose is very important. For example, like this is just an undergrad that I know, and so she had a baby when she was in high school. So she was doing the high school education while taking care of the baby, and she was top in her class. So that was her story. That's what made her unique, and she wrote that story in her statement, and she got a full scholarship, and she was able to enter the program. So I'm not telling you you need to have a baby, but I'm telling the story here is like, you need to make the statement as unique and as appealing as possible. So statement of purpose. Then network. This is like one of the most important thing. I'm gonna repeat this. I'm gonna stress this over and over and over again. I won't be here if I didn't network. So this is like one of the most powerful things that you can do to get your application noticed. For example, so when you apply to a US university, these professors get thousands and thousands of emails from people around the world. But here you could do a little bit more research. I've noticed that schools that have other Sri Lankan students already as grad students are willing to look into other Sri Lankan students. So one thing that you can try to do is go online, go to the website. Let's say you are looking into the biochemistry program, go through the labs and see who are the other biochemistry students who are already working as grad students. And if you know, or if you see any Sri Lankans, write to them. You write to 10, 2 people will reply, there's nothing to lose there. So then sometimes if these people are very nice, they might introduce you to their professor, and you can start networking, talking to those professors, and those professors can influence the admissions board. Like you can show why you are interested in the program and what skills you have and why they need to take you. So network, that's the key. So I know, like, if you are in the US, it's easier because you can personally go walk into a professor's room and talk to them. But if you are in Sri Lanka, it's a little bit different. So that's what I'm telling you. Like, if you notice that there are other Sri Lankans in the lab, it is more likely those professors will reply to you. And if you contact some of these Sri Lankan grad students, they are more. I doubt they would not ignore your email if you are Sri Lankan. So network. And lastly, interview. So I don't know how much this is relevant for kids who are in Sri Lanka, because most of these graduate programs, they have interviews. And I know that for some students, these schools have invited them to come for an open house. So what they mean by open house is like all these disciplines like the neurobiology, the biochemistry, the structural biology people, they will have like a small booth or like a poster, like introducing their research. So I know some people, like even Sri Lankans, when they apply to Berkeley, they have been invited to attend those open houses. And during those open houses, it's sort of like an interview. You get to speak with the professors. If not, some people get Skype interviews. And if you get a Skype interview, it's very important you make that impression that you're really, really valuable, and like you are really, excited for to join the program. And again, here's the point is, you need to show why you are special among other 1,000 students and why you need to be given that opportunity. All right, so these are the basic requirements. I would say letter of rec, statement, network. If you do those 3 things, there's high chance your application will be considered. Now, once you've done that, okay, so you get in, and now what? So why I really wanted to talk about this is I really didn't do this part very well, and I wish I did it the way that I'm going to tell you how to do it. So one thing that you want to do, okay, I see that my slides aren't moving. Network, if you do those three things, there's high chance your application will be considered. Oh, okay. Thing that you want to do. Okay, it's working. So network, anyway. If you do the. Okay, sorry, I just thought the slide is frozen. Anyway, okay, so let's get back. So okay, now you were able to get in, and now what? So one thing that you need to remember about grad school is the U.S. Graduate program requires you to take coursework for the first 2 years, and the first semester it'll be more general, like everyone will be taking the same courses, but then after the first semester they let you choose whatever course you would like to take. Like they offer different classes, and the reason why I wanted to stress here is, unlike in graduate school, the coursework grade isn't as important, because when you go to a job interview, a postdoc or like an industry job, no one is going to ask what's your GPA in grad school. They will only care about your publication record. But what's really important about this coursework is, for example, like I'm a biochemist, my background was in biology. However, my research requires so much knowledge in computer coding and statistics. I was clueless. So I wish back then, when I was given the opportunity to take coursework, and with my biology background, I should have taken a computer coding class. I should have taken a nice statistics class, because it's very important you become an all-rounder. Like you don't have to be a computer programmer, but you just need to you could always hire a bioinformatician, but just to show like how much just to like understand or give instructions to this bioinformatician, you need to know some computer coding. So I think like you really need to be very smart about using your coursework. Pick classes that would really help your project. So that's something that I really regret not doing, and I encourage you when you get in to do it wisely. So next, finding a lab and deciding on a lab rotation. So here I need to talk about something. So in terms of US graduate programs, especially the program that I entered, it was an umbrella program where they don't specifically take you into a specific lab, or they don't assign you to a specific PI. They just take you into a very broad program, and they let you do rotations for the first year. Like for example, at UC Berkeley, in the first year of grad school, you can choose 3 labs. You can work in those labs for like 9 weeks. So I think I'm very inclined to that kind of programs rather than direct intakes, because I know there are some programs that does direct intakes. What I mean by direct intake is, from Sri Lanka, you write to this professor that you're interested, and the professor has money, he has a position open, he takes you directly to that lab. Now, the drawback in that kind of intake is you don't really get to know the lab, you don't really get to know the PI, because you are only able to talk to him for like maybe maximum 1 hour, and you need to make the decision of your entire graduate life, meaning your PhD, based on that small brief interaction. While if you get into an umbrella program where you are allowed to do lab rotations, you are able to like mingle with the lab, talk to the PI, talk to the people in the lab, attend lab meetings, and you could really see what kind of projects they are doing. So a couple of things that you can think about when you're choosing a lab rotation, because they only allow 3 to 4 lab rotations. So you have to make the decision at the end of the first year. So still, it's better than nothing. rather than a direct intake. I'm not very fond of that kind of programs. First thing is discipline. So discipline means like if you soon after undergrad, you don't really have so much experience. You don't know whether you want to be an immunologist or a neurobiologist or biochemist. So maybe you can choose a few labs, one in immunology, one in, neuroscience. So that's the discipline. Second is project. So I wouldn't really worry too much about the project because, the rotation project wouldn't be your final project. Normally during a rotation you're paired with a postdoc or a senior grad student, so you're working on her project. So but it gives you a slight idea what kind of research the lab is doing. And mentor. So for me this was like the most important thing when I was deciding a lab, because given that I came from Sri Lanka and I had very little experience in lab experiments, and I really didn't know to go into a lab and start a project, while most of the US kids, they have so much experience. They start doing research since their first year as an undergrad, and even kids from China, India, they know what they really want to do. So for me, I wanted a mentor that would really hold my hand and guide me throughout, like really to the next level. And I was very lucky to find that person, but that's something that I considered very important. Then it's lab environment. So every lab is different. My PhD lab is quite different from my postdoc lab. So sometimes you need to go in and see, like, do you like very more communal lab, or you would like a more independent lab. And lastly, I think funding. So you have the right to speak to your PI before you join the lab to ask whether he has funding. And if he doesn't have funding, I strongly suggest funding for the next 5 years, because US PhDs takes about 4 to 6 years. I strongly suggest don't join the lab. So now, like, you do the coursework you really require, you do the rotations, you make the final decision, and finally I come to the title that I want to talk about. So how to survive and thrive in graduate program in biomedical sciences. So I try to point it down very quickly, and I have only about 40 minutes, so let's go fast, because I want to make sure I have some time for questions. So basically, you need to remember graduate school is not a sprint but a marathon, because it's a long process. And especially in biology or biomedical sciences, most 90% of the experiments fail. Sometimes you work for like 2 weeks, you do this tiny mistake and you lose everything that you have done for that 2 weeks or even months. So you need to be resilient, you need to be strong, hardworking, and just it's okay to be sad, it's okay to feel depressed if things fail, but you need to be able to bounce back up and go back at it. So first thing, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Then second, you need to decide on your priorities. Now, for example, when I was in grad school, I worked 7 days, 10 to 12 hours per day. That was my decision because I didn't have a lot of lab experience. I had so much catching up to do compared to my peers. So my priority was to learn to get back at the same speed as the rest of the class. So even though others were engaged in other extracurricular activities, I was focused on really working hard and learning things. So you need to know what your priorities are when you're in grad school. Then, don't be a technician, but drive your project. So I am also learning this because I've been really bad at that. So when I was in grad school, my PI was amazing. Like, he held my hand throughout the entire process. And I got really spoiled by that because I let him hold my hand throughout the PhD program. And so the whole purpose of a PhD program is for you to become an independent scientist. It's okay to be dependent on your PI for suggestions, for ideas, and advice. But by the end of your PhD, you should be able to drive your project and be independent. Because I didn't really learn that well when I started my postdoc, I struggled a lot. So I kind of wasted 2 years because I really didn't know how to drive my own project. Because in postdoc, the PI expects you to be independent. He gives you the broader picture, and it's your turn to drive it. So I struggled. I'm still learning at it, but I think it's very important when you're a grad student towards the end of your grad school years to be independent. So next one, stay updated with your literature and be creative. So this is another thing that I'm also working on. So when I was in grad school, I would work 14-12 hours per day, but I was really bad at reading. I think that's a habit that I'm really struggling even now. It's very important to be updated and find out what's happening in the field. And especially, if you're working on something and you wouldn't know what everybody else is doing, you might be doing the same work that others are doing, so it would be hard for you to publish. So it's important to be knowledgeable and updated with the literature. Having said that, to be successful in your project, even if you have read every single paper that's out there, that's not going to make you a successful scientist. You need to be creative. You need to think smart. You need to come up with smart decisions on how to make a problem solvable in a more unique way. So stay updated with your literature, but you need to be creative. Next, collaborate. So this aspect was very important, especially in my case. I really didn't learn this when I was in grad school. I was like working on my own, maybe someone like also my one of the professors in the same lab. But when I came to postdoc, my project needed so many different expertise. We needed bioinformaticians, we needed immunologists, we needed genome editors. So we had to really collaborate, not just outside lab, but even outside school. So collaboration is very important when you're a scientist. And apply for fellowships. So when I was in grad school, I was very fortunate to get a fellowship, a pre-doctoral fellowship. I have to again mention for Sri Lankan kids, the fellowships available for Sri Lankans are limited. However, it's available, but it's a little bit competitive. It's still doable. It's competitive, but you need to remember that. And one of the nice things about getting these fellowships is you get a little bit of extra money to buy more reagents. So biochemistry experiments are expensive, so it's nice to have some buffer money to like do some research, more additional research. And they also pay your stipend, and that's a big relief for the PI, because the PI can use that money for your reagent budget, and also they provide money for you to travel for conferences. So strongly suggest apply for fellowship, and then attend conferences and present your work. I really encourage this because number one, this is a good way to see what's happening outside your field, because sometimes when you're really focused in your work and you just don't want to like stop working, you want to keep working, but it's better to like stop that for a while and see what's happening out there. And also when you present your work in these kind of conferences, you get a lot of feedback, you get criticized a lot, and it's the opportunity for you to like fight for your science sometimes, and get great ideas. Like I've had people coming into my posters and their ideas really like helped me to improve my work. So strongly suggest go to conferences, talk to people. And lastly, I have a few more slides, but just this one is, I want to stress it so much, because network. So I'm here, I got my current position as this postdoctoral position because I went to a conference and I spoke to my current PI, and that's how we networked, we talked, and he invited me to come for an interview. So it's very important, not just conferences, network among other people in other labs, other schools. So network is key. So because after you get your graduate degree, you might have like the most amazing publication record, sometimes to get to the next step, sometimes to get your application noticed in a job market. Networking is going to pay you a lot, because if you think about it, thousands of applications come into these positions, and if you know someone in that company, they might refer your application to be considered. So network is key. And I like to talk about this one because I've had amazing undergrads working with me in grad school as well as in my postdoc. And number one, it's very inspiring to have these little kids coming in and asking questions, because sometimes they ask these really basic questions that you never really thought about, and it's like, oh wow, it reminds you didn't really know why you do this, and it's the question from that undergrad really inspire you to like go after it. So I really value training kids. Sometimes it's time consuming, sometimes it might be stressful, but I think you should give a try. Then don't compare yourself to others. Well, I mean, this is something one of my friends from graduate school told me. I'm very bad at that. I sometimes look at others and compare myself and always cry, oh, I'm not so successful as this person. Oh, I don't have so many papers as this person. So in graduate school, sometimes you need to know that everyone's journey is different. Some people's projects work out really well. Some people's project doesn't work out that well. And for example, I've worked on one project for 2 years, not one project, one aspect of my project for 2 years, and didn't give anything. So my friend told me, think of these blinders that these horses use for their races. So they put these blinders for the horses when they're running, so that they could only look front and they don't get distracted by the other horses running beside them. So I like to think of this analogy, because then I can like really stay laser focused on my work and not get distracted by other people. So don't compare. I mean, I should tell this to myself, Anyway, and lastly, find a balance. So again, I'm really bad at this, because sometimes I forget that I really enjoy working in lab, and I don't really sometimes find time, like realize that I've spent so much time. So you do one experiment and you're really anxious to know the answer until the next day. So all what you could think about is that experiment. So I'm really working on finding a balanced life even now. Having said that, it's very important. So I do have a nice group of friends back in graduate school as well as now. So it's sometimes really nice to go hang out with them, forget about work, disconnect. It's good for you, and do some exercise. So I think graduate school is a long period, and it's important you balance it well. Then, lastly, this is my last point, and then we have 10 minutes for questions. So I like to say, don't think of it as a job, make it your hobby. And I really enjoy my work. It's not about the money, and if again I have to stress here, if you want to make money, science is not the place to be, because you don't make a lot of money, but it's very rewarding. You feel really excited and enthusiastic about what you're working on, and for me it's something that keeps me going, and it's a curiosity, because I would kill myself if I had to do a 9-to-5 job. That's not my thing. But I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's like some people really like to have a very programmed life. I like my life to be chaotic. I like my life to have some risks. And so I really enjoy what I'm doing. I don't regret a minute that I'm on this path, and that things didn't work out the way I wanted at the beginning. Maybe, who knows, I don't know. I still think, what would my life be if I had been a medical doctor? Might have enjoyed it, I don't know. But I don't regret where I came. So with that, I'm ready to take questions. So let's see, I need to open. You mentioned it was normal to feel stressed. Okay, let's see the questions now. Are you recommend to do research from undergraduate? Yes. Okay, so that's a very good question. I'm glad you asked that, Bhanuka. So yes, because before I did this session, I actually spoke to my current postdoc PI, and I'm like, Jamie, if you are like considering a student for your grad school, what would you consider? And he was like, Das, I want to look at their research experience. Now, the thing about that, for US students, they are able to join a lab since first year and do research for 4 years. I know it's not the same thing in Sri Lanka, might have changed now, but I know if you do a 4-year degree, the last year you can do a research for a 1 whole year. So my advice to you is, take that time, be serious about your research, make sure you really put effort and you learn something, so that you can talk about it during your interview, talk about it during your statement of purpose, and have your PI or the professor that you're working under talk about you in his letter of rec, that you have really worked on your research. So I mean, it's a little bit of a drawback as Sri Lankan kids that they can't do research for all 4 years. But I think take that opportunity of working that last year thesis very seriously. So let's see. Hey, Dasman, thanks for the amazing. Was normal to feel stressed during the time at grad school? Could you elaborate a bit more on how you manage to effectively deal with stress as a student? Well, again, it's a good question. I have to say, in my PhD, well, it wasn't okay. So here's the thing. Let's put it this way. So in my PhD, my grad school life wasn't that stressful because I had this amazing PI. He wouldn't let me get stressed because he would also he would help me out a lot, but I can still answer that question because my postdoctoral life was quite miserable the first year because not because of my PI or anything. My postdoc PI is amazing. It's just that I completely changed fields and I wasn't being very independent, and I really didn't know how to drive my project. So the way that I sometimes deal with stress is I disconnect. Like take a week off, just don't think of work, go for a swim, go for a walk. Sometimes I would go to the grocery store and I walk and walk and walk. So just do something that you would disconnect and then come back refreshed. It's sometimes especially if you're stuck in some problem, like a research problem, and you're trying everything that is possible to fix that problem, nothing is working. This is something my PhD mentor used to say: stop doing it, stop it. Start doing something, a different experiment, come back to it after a week or two, and then things will be better. And also now another thing that I also do to relieve my stress, I felt a lot of stress as a postdoctoral researcher than grad school, but it's quite the same thing. We all do research, so it's the same thing. I like to go to the temple. I have a very supportive group of priests that I like to talk to. So, that's something that you can think about. And also in the US, you also have a very good support system of therapists. So it's okay to go talk to these people because grad school can be very hard. Yeah. Then let's see. Could a student with incredible personal achievements but poor exam results or undergraduate scores stand a chance at all? It is, yeah, it's quite possible, because that is where, you know, your letter of rec and your statement will stand a chance. Because I know Berkeley, they don't really pay attention to the exam scores much. They pay a lot of attention to the statement. So if you can make your statement as unique and as specific as possible, I think you know, you will most definitely have a chance. One thing that you need to remember, even if you have bad scores but you have a really good research record, like you have publications, doesn't have to go to an international journal. If you have like even a local publication, that would take you far in getting in. One of the brutally honest stories I've heard. Thank you so much, Kipi. I'm sure this talk will inspire many students. Okay. Thank you, Sanjay. He's my friend. How will the current pandemic affect international admissions to US? I applied last year and was waitlisted for some time and then was rejected. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So Shehan, I'm really sorry that you had to go through that. I honestly don't know how to answer that question, because even for us, the pandemic had really affected us. All our research has stopped since March. It's a very stressful period even for us, because even for us, you know, we have our publications to finish. Our PIs have like invested so much money on this research. So I honestly don't know what to tell you here, but I think as soon as a vaccine is available, things will come back to normal, because I don't think research will get affected in the US. You know, they put a lot of money, even, I mean, given the current situation. So I really strongly suggest you that you should, you know, reapply. What exactly do they look for in a motivation letter? You mean, if you mean like a letter of recommendation, some of the things that, you know, we talked about with my undergrad when we were writing her letter is a couple of things. So even as an undergraduate student, she was quite independent, and she was very quick in learning things, and I was very specific to write about it. And she was even able to train some of the grad students in the lab on certain techniques. So that's a very unique ability even as an undergrad. So, you know, to be able to learn fast, being independent even at that young age, and being even a mentor for senior students. So that's something that is very motivating. And also she was a great team player. So most labs would want you to be a team player. Sometimes if you're in a very competitive lab, it's not going to happen, because, you know, like people are so self-centered. Well, but PIs really look for the team spirit. And every time we have someone that is like glue, like they bring the whole team together, the PI is so excited. So if you can stress those things in your letter of rec, I think it's gonna take you really far. And if you are talking about the okay, let's see. Okay, one more thing. If you're talking about the statement of purpose, you can tell other things that you have gotten involved, like leadership things, and, you know, like if you have discovered, you know, something. I know Sri Lankan kids are very creative and smart. So if you have discovered any cool thing in your research, you can maybe elaborate on those things. So just things that are out of the box. That so US really like uniqueness and creativity. They don't like all these memorizations, and if they hate when you send the same template. So if you can stand out, you got the place here. Okay, what is the thing that a Sri Lankan undergrad do daily, weekly, targeting grad school? Okay, so that's also my friend Sujan. Okay, daily and weekly, targeting grad school. I think daily and weekly, do more research. You know, get yourself involved in research, because I like to say that because the first thing that my current mentor told me, like when I asked Jamie, what would you look for a grad student, is like, I like to see their research experience. So try to get involved in a research project. And they really like community service, do something good. I don't know whether they have like over here they have shelters for animals. You can go help those, do something different out of the box, so you can write about it in your letter. So can I become a doctor after biomedical science? Can you please? Yes. So yes, you can. So basically, you can. I know even in my PhD, we had a PhD. When I was doing PhD, there was this student. She was a brilliant researcher. She got her PhD, and then in the US, you have to do this exam called MCATs. It's like a standardized exam. It's not the easiest exam because I know my undergrad just took it. She did it really well. It's a very stressful, but it's doable. She did it. So once you do the MCATs, you can reapply to medical school and you can become a doctor. So the US system of becoming a doctor is different. You have to do a 4-year degree before you become a doctor. So it's like a postgraduate degree. Like in Sri Lanka, you do the MBBS and you become a doctor. Over here, it's different. You do a 4-year degree, and then as your postgraduate degree, you can do a medical school. But also, you can do your PhD, and then you can do a medical degree and get your MD. Having said that, there's another opportunity where what you can do is there's this program called MD PhD. So you can do both together. I'm not sure whether it's available for international students, but that's something to look into. For what they do is they do a 4-year degree. So maybe like you do your undergrad back in Sri Lanka, and then you do the first 2 years of medical school. Then after that, you stop medical school, you go to graduate school, finish your PhD, and then you go back to medical school. I've known people who've done that, and I know there are only few positions available, very competitive, but it's doable. Yes. All right, Yomal, cool session. Thank you. So I don't see any more questions. Okay, what's the one skill you think is most important for a PhD candidate once you get in? I think one thing that I really suffered is not being able to be independent. So I think being independent as a researcher is one of the most important skills that you can develop as a PhD. So you can learn a technique, you can memorize your textbook and learn about something, but creativity you cannot, practice. So you just need to like work at it. So I think that's one of the most important skills that one can develop, because after that, if you become a creative scientist, that is what would so I'm getting a message, not removed from the page. Thank you. Okay, so that is something that that you can that is something that you can really develop here, because something that I noticed, like scientists over here are incredibly talented and incredibly creative. So I think it's very important that you develop that skill, because back in Sri Lanka, we were trained. I think things have changed by now, but when I was a undergraduate, we were trained to memorize pages after pages, and it didn't really help me when I came here. All right, so I guess it's 1 hour and 5 minutes. So I'm not getting any more questions. So I think it's a Sunday for Sri Lankans, and we don't want to I don't want to waste your time because it's your weekend. So maybe I'm gonna stop this. And Atil told me that I need to save this session. I don't know how to do that though. I'm very bad at it. Let's see. in live video. So maybe how do I save the session? Let's see. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let you guys go because I'm not gonna save the session means not remove it. Okay, got it. Okay, so I'm gonna end the live video right now, and thank you guys for joining me. I really hope you guys learned something, and I was able to inspire a few people, at least a few, I hope, and apply to grad school, be a scientist, change the world. Okay, thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.